Thanks everyone for being here today. With the executive order signed yesterday by the administration, we were pleased to see that Canada got a day one reprieve from tariffs. But if you look at the executive order, there's a review going on that is due back on April the 1st. So we have a short window, I think, to be able to demonstrate the very positive relationship that Canada and U.S. have from a tariff-free point of view and why it should remain tariff-free. We think that our best approach now would be to focus on diplomacy and refrain from talk of any kind of threat of retaliatory tariffs. We think that we have a very positive story, a very positive story to tell in Canada. We think that we should be talking about addressing the trade deficit by how we might be able to have more cross-border trade in goods and services. The point I've been making is that if you take energy out of the mix, Canada actually buys more U.S. goods and services than the Americans buy from us, about $58 billion, according to a national bank survey. We could always look at ways we could buy more, whether it's military equipment, whether it is the infrastructure for more electricity, gas turbines, transformers, or whether it's AI data center technology and other products. Number three, I think we do need to double down on border security. It's quite clear from the executive order around the southern border that the issue of illegal fentanyl and gangs and migrants is top of mind for this presidency, and we want to make sure that Canada is seen to be a partner in border security. I think there's been some good measures that have been announced, and we have to execute on those. We also have to have a major acceleration of Canada's 2% of GDP NATO commitment. As you've begun to see, the incoming administration is now talking about a much higher level of NATO spending. And so the fact that Canada isn't even at 2% is something that is going to continue to be a trade irritant. If we want to demonstrate to the Americans that we are a reliable partner in energy security, having an accelerated plan to get to at least the 2% is going to be vital. We also have to crack down on all the immigration streams and loopholes that permit individuals who are hostile to Canada and the United States from entering the country. Anytime there are issues of a Canadian causing trouble in America, that is noted by the administration. And so we have to make sure, once again, that we're not exacerbating. And if we want to have a genuine partnership on national security and energy security, the federal government has to repeal all of the hostile to energy policies, the clean electricity regulations, the emissions cap, which we know is a production cap, the net zero vehicle mandate, which is set to take place starting in January of 2026, and to work in genuine partnership to reach the the U.S. goals of energy dominance. I believe that the Americans can't get there without Canada. The Americans consume 21 million barrels a day of oil. They produce 13 million barrels a day, and they have to get the balance from somewhere. Our particular brand of heavy oil is perfect for their refineries, and there aren't very many great places to get it from. Venezuela, Iran, Iraq. We think we've got a very strong case to make for more pipeline access to the United States. And I guess finally, I'd say, if we want to stop being so reliant on a single trading partner, we've got to take down internal trade barriers between Canadian provinces, start looking at how we can do major nation building projects to our east and west coast, whether it's Northern Gateway getting restarted in British Columbia or Energy East conversations getting started off the East Coast. That's really the way that through those kinds of major infrastructure projects that we can start diversifying our customer base around the world. And so we've got to have a bit of our own discussion internally about how we're going to address that in the long term. But with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Premier. We're first going to go to David Staples, and then we'll go to Robert Tuttle. So David, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. And David, I'll give you one more second here to unmute if you'd like to.
Can you hear me now?
Sure can.
Sorry, push the wrong button there. Good to talk to you, Premier Smith. Between Donald Trump's great enthusiasm for tariffs, and he's talking about wanting to make a lot of money, the Americans with it, and between that and Eastern Canada's in the face of that, evident willingness to put a export tariff on Alberta if Alberta is excluded from these Trump tariffs, if Alberta oil is excluded. Is Alberta in a no-win position, kind of between a rock and a hard place between these two forces that seem one way or another want to put a tariff on Alberta oil?
Well, I don't believe in no-win situations. I think we've got such a great case to make and a deal to be done. I would like to see all of the provinces and the federal government aligned on trying to find some of those solutions, because I think they're there. There's no question that this U.S. president is enthusiastic about tariffs. I think that we're looking at this reprieve as being an opportunity for us to make the case about why we should continue to be tariff-free. But we do have to be prepared that if he's looking at tariffs as a revenue source, then it's going to require a bit of a different result from us. We're going to have to think about what that actually means. I think if we get into a protracted trade war, I suppose we could spend the next 4 years fighting, but I think we have to understand what it is, the baseline. Is it possible for us to maintain a tariff-free relationship? And if not, is it possible to have the lowest tariff applied to Canada as possible? And if not, is it possible to get certain carve-outs? I mean, those are the kind of conversations that we can just begin to have now with the new administration firmly in place as of yesterday and being sworn in. So I'm an optimist. I think there's a deal to be made here, and so I think that's the positive case that I'll be trying to explore. But I don't know that we really know what the Americans need in order to maintain this special status. I don't know if it's border security, if we check the boxes there, if it's the 2% NATO commitment, if we check the boxes there, or if it's something else. That I think is part of the reason why we've got to be working on this relationship, building it, and getting to the root of what it is we need to do to maintain our special status.
So, in Eastern, many Canadians see Trump in the darkest terms. They see him as a bully and as a racist and as a horrible person. Are you concerned that this kind of animosity towards Trump might overwhelm the negotiation and inform Canada's position, and that the Canadian government takes that on essentially, and in the face of whatever his negotiating position is, we become extremely aggressive and retaliatory? Are you seeing that, and are you concerned about that?
I think we're in a difficult position because we don't have a government federally with a long enough mandate to be able to sustain the negotiations. We're going to see a change in prime minister in 47 days. We're going to see, again, potentially a spring election, which might result in another change of prime minister of a few weeks after that. And so I think you're going to see that the relationships that the premiers have and our Council of the Federation table has is going to be the consistent voice over the next number of months while the federal scene gets sorted out. This is why I've been calling for an election for some time now, is that whoever it is needs a mandate to negotiate. And what I worry about is, because of politics, that certain political leaders are going to try to turn this relationship with Trump into some kind of election issue and damage the relationship. That's what I worry about. That's part of the reason why, even though we've had an office here since 2005 as a subnational government, why I will be spending a lot of time in America, is that once the federal government situation is sorted out, then I think the negotiations can begin in earnest. But I think it's incumbent upon all of the premiers to make sure that we're making our own case very loudly, very strongly, in order to be able to avoid tariffs.
Thank you, David. And we're going to go to Robert Tuttle now, and then we'll go to Terry Reith. So Robert, go ahead.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So last night, Donald Trump at the White House said that he was looking at February 1st for a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico. And you've been saying we have a reprieve. I'm just wondering how you square those two things, and how do you interpret what he said last night? The other thing is, I mean, do you see a point at which some sort of forceful action will be necessary? If Donald Trump sees tariffs as a revenue source, it doesn't seem that there's much you can do to assuage him. And he hasn't really been clear at all about what he wants. Do you see at some point at which Canada will have to be much more forceful in its approach?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, whether it's a few days or whether it's a few weeks, I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows. And what I do know is that in the executive order on trade, he gave direction to his various ministers to examine all of the trade agreements, including the one with Canada, and bring back a comprehensive report on April the 1st. So that is what's written in the executive order. And so I would hope that we have some reprieve. I think everyone was expecting tariffs day one. That didn't happen. So whether it's a few days or whether it's a few weeks, I think we should make sure that we're using this very well. I am more of the view that we have to find a deal from a diplomatic point of view. And I don't know that this particular administration and this particular president responds well to threats, especially empty threats. If he wants more energy security, then you should be talking about how you can provide energy security, not making the conversation about energy security undermined. So that's why I've taken a bit of a different approach. We've been wanting to double our oil and gas production. We want to double the amount of pipeline space. I think that there's a constructive conversation to have there. I think BC has a constructive conversation to have about germanium, which is one of the critical minerals that has been identified by China that they will no longer export to the United States, essential in defense applications. I think Scott Moe in Saskatchewan has a great case to make about uranium. They already provide 20% of the world's uranium, and America is relying on Kazakhstan and Russia for a portion of their supply. And you can go through each province and each territory, and each of us has a value proposition that I think syncs up with America's aspiration to be energy dominant on both the traditional forms of energy as well as critical minerals. So I think we have a position of strength going in, and I think we should be confident going in from that position of strength. To be able to provide a North American context. So I may take a bit of a different approach from my counterparts, but I think it's going to be the successful one.
And just one follow-up. Alberta, a few years ago, curtailed its oil production to support the price and that was supported by Conservatives and the NDP. I mean, why wouldn't that approach? I'm not talking about cutting off oil or even taxing oil, but just curtailing oil to keep the price up if there were tariffs. Well, would that be an option? I
mean, to give the Prime Minister some credit, even though there were $125 billion worth of projects canceled, including Northern Gateway and Energy East, they did still manage to build the Coastal GasLink pipeline as well as the Trans Mountain pipeline. And what we've seen with now just being able to have access to the international market, it has stabilized the price of Western Canada Select. So the question we should be asking ourselves is, if it had already that success, why wouldn't we do more of it? Why wouldn't we revisit Northern Gateway, which really would have opened up a massive new market for our products? Why wouldn't we talk about Energy East? I mean, the energy insecurity that we have in Eastern Canada, virtually 100% of what they get either comes to them via the United States or comes to them via an international partner, some of which are not necessarily friendly to us all the time. Why wouldn't we be talking about how providing energy security to our friends in Ontario and Quebec and Atlantic Canada by having our own pipeline built? So I just think that there's a recalibration that needs to be done, the reason why we have such strong north-south relationships and why those are the dominant relationships is because we're not very good at supporting each other as provinces. We have too many internal trade barriers and we have too much opposition to these big kind of nation building projects. Maybe that's the recalibration we need to do, so that not only can we be supportive of our biggest trading partner, but also diversify our markets. So we've got a number of conversations I think we need to have at the Council of the Federation, and hopefully with the support of government, we can kickstart some of those types of projects again.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Now we're going to go to Terry Reid, and then we will go to Tyson Fodor after that. So Terry, go ahead.
And good morning, Premier. Just want to ask about the effectiveness of what you're doing there and in Mar-a-Lago. First off, do you think that you and President Trump have created some kind of a personal relationship after that meeting? And do you think that that relationship is going to make a difference now?
I can tell you the administration knows who Alberta is. They know we got a lot of oil and gas and that we want to sell more of it. And I'm looking forward when the secretaries are formally sworn in to have more formal conversations. Every single person I have met while I've been down here, I have made the Alberta case. I have talked about how we can be a provider of energy security for the US. I've talked about how by backfilling for the Americans, if the Americans want to exert themselves internationally by exporting more of their produced oil to their trading partners, then they need somebody to be able to provide the backfill so that their consumers have lower prices. So Alberta is the answer, and Canada is the answer. So I would say that that's the point of discussion that we're beginning with the administration. We can only do that formally once they're sworn in, but we've made the connections now, and we'll be doing that in earnest over the coming weeks and months. And the nice part is we've seen the energy emergency declaration and the executive order, as well as the order looking at critical minerals and building out electricity infrastructure. That's a roadmap for Canada. Looking at what those two orders say and how we can fit our national interest into helping America achieve those goals. I think that we have a very strong case to make, but every province has an equally strong case to make.
So if you are successful and oil and gas does get a carve out, what's your next move, and how does Alberta further respond to help the rest of the country, or does it not? And what happens if no carve out?
Well, I haven't been asking for a carve out. I've been asking for a recognition that this important trade relationship means Canada should get a carve out. That Canada has got a special integrated relationship with the U.S. That Canada buys more U.S. goods and services than any other country in the world. That Canada is able to singularly be able to provide that security to the United States. And that's again, I think we have a very strong case to make with oil and gas as one component. But whether it's uranium or germanium or any of the other critical minerals, we've got a very strong case to make. And so that's why I say let's go in with some confidence, and let's. I think that's the true Team Canada approach. I don't anticipate a carve out. I never have, but I have been asking for Canada to have a carve out on the basis of this special relationship.
Thank you, Terry. And next we're going to go to Tyson Fedor, and then after that we'll go to Don Braid. So Tyson, go ahead.
Premier, thanks for taking our questions. I know yesterday you had mentioned in one of your TV interviews that the conversations with President Trump a few weeks ago at Mar-a-Lago, he had basically said yes, he's open to having more Alberta oil come to the U.S. We heard yesterday with the national energy emergency that he had basically called. Do you think now, him being in office, he's actually going to remember some of those conversations with you? And what gives you the confidence that maybe these carve-outs do come February 1st to actually help with that national energy emergency?
I think we should look at the suite of people that are being put forward for nomination. So Chris Wright from Liberty Energy, former CEO there, is he understands this business, and he understands the integration, and he understands Canada. I had a chance to meet him while I was down here. Doug Burgum, who was the North Dakota governor, he has a very strong relationship with his northern neighbor, Saskatchewan, and in fact understands carbon capture, utilization, and storage, because they have a major project that has sequestered 42 megatons of CO2 in cooperation with Saskatchewan. He also knows what we provide in energy currently, and also knows that there are some very quick projects that we would be able to approve to be able to get more of our product going down to the United States. So I feel very optimistic with the people that he has put in those key positions, that they have a deep understanding of the energy industry and of Canada in particular. And so that's some great common ground to start from.
You mentioned some of those projects potentially quickly getting approved. I know just a couple of weeks ago you met with Enbridge. You were with TC Energy just a couple of days ago in Washington as well. Speaking with these companies, do they have plans to quickly get projects potentially even in the ground and maybe even approved, get through the regulatory approval process much quicker than potentially previous chances under other governments? And do you think that this could happen within the next 4 years?
Sure do, and I think that's what we've got to be looking for, is that 4 years can go by in a flash, and so we need to take advantage of this opportunity right now to make sure that we get some of these projects well underway, so that if there is a change of government, they don't end up getting derailed like they did last time with Keystone XL. So I can tell you from the conversations I have had with the pipeline companies that do business in Canada, they have good relationships with potential cross-border partners in the United States, and they've all been dusting off old plans with the idea that now's the opportunity to bring them forward. So we'll be a champion in making sure that as we understand what those projects might be, that we can be a voice in helping to make the American administration aware of them, and that we would be able to work through the regulatory process to make them happen.
Thank you, Tyson. And we're going to go to Don Braid now, and then after we will go to Nathan Vandercliff. So Don, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Premier. Could you tell me if you're still in Washington and if you intend to stay there, keep working at this between now and February the 1st, seems to be the crucial date?
I am still in Washington. I've got trains behind me, so if you're hearing any of that, that's part of the reason why there's a little bit of noise in the background. I've got full days of meetings and roundtables today, and as well as tomorrow. And my plan is to leave Washington on the 23rd, and I'll be back home.
Today, Liberal is meeting at the moment. They just went in and back to meet. What is your view of what these folks might come up with as they face this crisis and their own crisis at the same time?
Sorry, Don, you're cutting in and out a little bit there. Who was meeting?
Oh, sorry about that. I'll try again. The Liberal cabinet's meeting right now. What's your fear? What's the worst they can come up with? They deal with their own crisis as well as the international crisis.
Well, I would hope that they don't think that they have to do first strike. I mean, that would be foolish to do something like that. We have had a reprieve, and we should take advantage of this period of time now to really get down to what it is we need to do to satisfy some of the concerns that the Americans have. I think that there was a good start made with the announcement of 1.3 billion in border security, but an announcement is one thing, implementing it is another. And so I would hope that what the cabinet would see is that they've got to move on getting those additional officers, getting those additional resources, and showing the Americans that we are going to be a partner. We should watch what the Americans do over the next 48 hours, because it looks to me like the executive orders signed give immediate action to a number of their agencies. And so I think we will see with their demonstration about how quickly they expect us to be able to deploy some of those resources. So I would hope that that's what the cabinet discussion is about, is how do we demonstrate that we're going to address these border issues that the Americans have identified so that they don't feel a need to pass an emergency order on their northern border the same way that they just did on their southern border.
Thank you, Don. And now we're going to go to Nathan Vandercliff, and then we will go to Lisa Johnson. So Nathan, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Premier Smith. Thanks for taking my question. I just wanted to ask an approach question. It's, you have been, Alberta has been, you have been making arguments for years about the importance of Alberta oil to the United States. I wonder why you think diplomacy, making those arguments is the right approach. Because I think you could see an argument from someone to suggest that actually what Donald Trump seems to understand and respect is power and a more muscular approach. Why do you think taking sort of a more diplomatic approach is the best approach?
My interpretation of the president is he likes to win. And so it's up to us to demonstrate how we can get a double win here. And I think it's a double win for us to sell more to the United States, buy more from the United States, have a joint energy security a strategy that leads to a national and international security strategy. So I'm prepared to approach it from that perspective, because we do have to be realistic. We're an economy that's 1/10 the size of the Americans. That we are far more reliant on the trade relationship with them than they are on us. And so trying a tit for tat tariff war without addressing the underlying issues it's not going to go well for Canada. So I don't think it can hurt to try the diplomatic approach and try to take a win-win.
And when President Trump was asked yesterday about tariffs on Canada and Mexico, he immediately spoke about immigration issues, about the border, calling Canada a very bad abuser also. And I know that there is a concern that President Trump, as well as his incoming Commerce Secretary, are looking at tariffs as a revenue source and with this External Revenue Service. But his answer on Canada and Mexico was directed to the border. Does that suggest to you that there is a difference in the way he is looking at the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, that in fact he may be looking at those tariffs on Canada and Mexico not in revenue terms, but for other reasons?
I think because we have the USMCA, USMA, I know it's a different acronym depending on which country you're in. Because we have that trade agreement and it comes up for renewal in 2026, that was actually also written about in the executive order yesterday. I think that the president has to demonstrate that there's a national security threat in order to be able to bring in extraordinary tariffs. That's my understanding of how American law works, because we do have this trade relationship. And so we should address those issues to satisfy that concern. We don't want to see tariffs brought in. That was the reason they were able to bring tariffs in before on steel and aluminum, is an exemption under one of their laws, the 232 section, I gather. And so that's why I think the president is leading with the issue of national security, is because that does allow for him to be able to impose measures in order to be able to address that. So if that's the issue, then let's address it. Let's not be a national security problem for the United States.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to Lisa Johnson, and then we'll go to Rahim Mohammed. So Lisa, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Sam. Can you hear me all right?
Sure can.
Great, thanks. What I'm kind of hearing from you so far is that you're continuing with your diplomatic approach, even though that we have this new date, February 1st. And in some respects, the goalposts have kind of shifted here. So and you talked about we need to refrain from threats, but what is your specific response if these tariffs come in? I mean, you could address everything you've listed as Trump's main irritants with no real guarantees Trump will budge. So is your specific response to just kind of take the punishment of tariffs and wait it out and continue working on that diplomatic response to address his concerns? Or what is your specific response should these come in?
Well, I think we wait and see if they come in and when they come in, and then we have a response at that time. I don't think that there's much point in trying to negotiate this in public with the media. I think that it's far more important for us to be thoughtful about it, to see what actually comes through, and then to be able to take a proportionate response. In trade, and when you do get into a tariff war, from what I've observed, is that you have to be thoughtful to make sure that it's proportionate and reasonable. And so we don't even know what that will look like yet. We don't know when it's coming in. And so until we see what it looks like, I don't think we can really know what the Canadian response is going to be. But I think that we need to understand that we have a value proposition for the United States that no other country in the world has. And that is really our best negotiating tool. And that's why I'm leading with that.
Thanks. And sorry, I have an unrelated question here, but yesterday we learned that the government lifted the 2022 coal moratorium. Did the government lift that moratorium to protect yourselves in court?
There's a couple things. One is we've got a better policy. So we're bringing forward a policy that bans strip mining and mountaintop removal in our eastern slopes. So it's very clear that those kinds of projects will not go ahead. Those are the things that we heard, is the concern about the exposure of and runoff of selenium, which would impact water, and the disruption of habitat. So we're bringing through a better, more robust policy. And so that's part of the reason why we put that forward. But I think that there will be some reporting on what the litigation looks like. If you look at the lawsuits that have been filed, it's $16 billion with the potential liability. And we have to take that seriously. And we have to make sure that the taxpayers are protected. At the same time, metallurgical coal is incredibly valuable. You need it for steel to make wind turbines. You need it to as a component to be able to make solar panels. You just cannot make wind turbines and solar panels without metallurgical coal. So whether it's old economy type of energy or new economy energy, we have to have a more reasonable approach to mining operations. And so we can address the environmental concerns, but we have to be prepared to work with industry partners so that we can get these things developed.
Thank you, Lisa. And now I'm going to go to Rahim, and then we'll go to Charles Delisle. So Rahim, go ahead and.
Premier Smith, one of the politicians who you crossed paths with yesterday was Marco Rubio, who I believe was confirmed as Secretary of State just a few hours after the two of you met. So Rubio, as a senator, was known for taking hawkish stances on both Venezuela and Iran. Did you get a sense that he was receptive to a kind of continental security argument for the continuation of a Canada-U.S. Energy relationship? And do you think a Rubio-led State Department will be an ally for Canadian energy?
Every ally in the administration will help. I mean, our understanding is that there's different perspectives at the cabinet table. There are some that understand the importance of the tariff-free trade relationship with Canada, and others that are really bullish on tariffs altogether. So that's a conversation that's playing out as the cabinet members get appointed. But I think your point is the valid one, and that's the one that we keep advancing. Is there are a lot of refineries that need to accept heavy oil, and you can only get it from a few places. And Venezuela and Iran are a couple of those places that I don't think the Americans want to do business with. So I think that does provide an opening for us to put forward the Canadian value proposition. And that's why we're going to continue to do that with every member of the administration, so that hopefully we'll be able to make that case and avoid tariffs on Canada altogether.
Do you think there's an argument to be made that if Trump goes ahead with tariffs on Canadian energy, some of the places where drivers will be hurt the most in terms of fuel prices will be in some of those super competitive Midwestern swing states, your Michigans, your Wisconsins? Trump has midterm elections to worry about 2 years from now. Is that an argument worth making that you're going to get maybe 50, 60% a gallon higher for your motorists in Michigan, in Wisconsin? And is that an argument you plan to be making in your future American media appearances?
Yes, absolutely it is. I mean, we're looking right now at the various refineries and petrochemical facilities that are 100% reliant on Canadian oil. And those are our allies in being able to make the case to the United States that this is a special trade relationship, and that it's one that should be maintained tariff-free, not only for our benefit, but for their benefit and the benefit of their consumers. So yes, we've been looking at all of those different refineries and other industrial operations, and we're hoping that they will also be loud voices in talking about why the Canada-U.S. relationship should be maintained.
Perfect. Thank you. And next we're going to go to Charles Delisle, and then we're going to go to Chris Farco. So Charles, go ahead.
Good morning, Premier Smith. Charles Delisle, Radio-Canada, Alberta. So Premier François Legault said that he's expecting that Ottawa gives compensation to the province that contribute to the tariff retaliation. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think it's a premature discussion. People shouldn't be talking about money that hasn't been collected yet and how to distribute it. I think that's probably a bit of a defeatist approach. I think we should really be talking about the ways in which we can maintain a tariff-free relationship, and I think that there's a lot of issues that we've got to deal with before then. So I'm not counting on any dollars at the moment, and I don't think any other premier should. I think we should all be focused on how do we address the border security issues, how do we make our strongest case for the integrated market, and then we see if that's going to be sufficient in being able to avoid tariffs.
My follow-up is on the tariffs being delayed till the 1st. We've been seeing some has been saying that your discussions with Trump maybe helped delay these tariffs. Do you take credit for that? And now knowing that it's the 1st, is there any help? Are you worried, basically?
Well, look, whether it's the 1st of February or the 1st of April, which was in the executive order, we know that we have a reprieve here that allows us to make the case to the Americans on the issues that are important to them. And so I will be doing that, and I hope my fellow premiers will be doing that. I hope our federal counterparts will be doing that. This is an opportunity, I think, for us to have that conversation. And so that's why I'm taking the approach with leading with diplomacy and strength in making the Canadian case, and I hope that's successful. I don't know that it will be. I can't prejudge the outcome. There's some things that the U.S. president has identified that are outside of a province's purview, outside of our control. A lot of that requires federal action. But I think that there is a window here for us to demonstrate that we've heard them loud and clear. We're going to take the security issues seriously, and then we can hopefully get on with maintaining the constructive relationship we have.
Perfect. Thank you. Now we're going to go, we have time for a few more questions. We're going to go to Chris Farco, and then we're going to go to David Aiken. So Chris, go.
Hi, Premier. We heard yesterday President Trump talk about energy dominance in the United States. But I'm wondering, what does that actually mean for Alberta? Is this an opportunity or is this a threat, particularly around things like investment attraction?
It's an opportunity, in my view, and part of what we just have to look at is the fields that the Americans have and the decline rate on some of that production to get a sense of where their opportunity is versus ours. It sounds to me like the Americans want to be a major exporter of energy in order to be able to crowd out their rivals and to be able to support their allies. And really the only way they can do that with their significant energy demand needs at home is to have a reliable partner to be able to backfill for them. That's us. And so I feel a lot of confidence that if we position our supportive role properly, that we should be able to demonstrate to the Americans that we are essential to their aspiration for global energy dominance, which leads into their national security concerns. And who knows? I mean, if we're able to be that provider for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, maybe that counts towards our NATO commitment that we can support their international efforts at security as well. I think we have to be creative in how we put that conversation forward. But I've looked at our reserves, and I've looked at the American reserves, and it wouldn't make sense for the Americans to cut off their own access to what could potentially be 100 trillion barrels of oil and 500 trillion cubic feet of gas. That wouldn't be, it seems to me they should understand that by building more pipelines to that resource, that actually helps America, it helps their consumers, and it helps with their energy security needs. So I'm optimistic that we can make that case.
And did you have follow-up, Chris?
Yes, Premier, you talked about pipelines there, and I'm wondering whether with the incoming energy secretary or any other members of the administration, what specific conversations have you had about reviving Keystone XL or a new export pipeline to the United States? And what steps are you prepared to make it happen?
I've made my case to every person that I've had a chance to talk with. As you know, that you can't have formal discussions and negotiations until the incoming administration is formally confirmed. But I've developed, they certainly know our position, and they know that we are here and we are here to help. And so as soon as those confirmations are completed, I'm hoping to be able to have more formal discussions about how we can accelerate the construction of infrastructure. What we've learned in Canada, I think, is that if you can use existing rights of way by either expanding existing pipelines or looping or compression, that is a faster track to be able to get projects built. And so all of the pipeline companies are dusting off proposals. And I think there's a few interesting ones that could be moved on very, very quickly. And that's what I'll be helping to present to the administration. Remember, I think the most important secretary for us to engage with is Doug Burgum, who's the Minister of Interior, but he's also the head of the Energy Council. So his job is to coordinate between, I think, 7 different ministries to make sure that pipelines can be built and that the environmental issues can be addressed in a satisfactory way. So that to me is going to be Canada's most important relationship, or Alberta's most important relationship when it comes to the energy export question.
Thank you. And we have time for 2 more questions. We're going to go to David Aiken, and then our last question will be Rick Bell. So David, go ahead and ask a question.
Good morning, Premier. Thanks again for taking our questions. We have a poll from our friends at Ipsos out this morning that says 80% of the country favors retaliatory tariffs. And I just wondered if that, and I think there's been other polls like that, would that influence your thinking at all in how Canada might respond?
Well, I don't govern by opinion polls. I govern by what I think is the right approach. And my conversations with members of the incoming administration have been very friendly and very positive. And so this is a long-term relationship. This is a relationship that's lasted more than 100 years. We have from time to time skirmishes, but you don't torch a 100-year relationship over a temporary problem. You identify the issues that are causing the irritation, and then you work through them one at a time. But I think that my objective, if I have a plan to double our energy production and double our pipeline capacity, it seems to me those conversations have to start now. So that's the reason why I think I'm just going to keep on building on the relationship first, and we'll see if my approach is successful. But I think that I understand why people are scared. That's part of what that reaction is that people are emotional, people are scared, and I think it's up to political leadership to be diplomatic and to be giving some assurance that we're working on this. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm working on it. I'll do my best. I hope it works, but it's the way that I have been able to have some success in already building some really good friendships down here, and I'm going to keep doing it.
And I just wanted to go back to something you said earlier today to us about carve-outs. In speaking with representatives of other premiers' offices, I got the sense that they were concerned that Alberta was seeking a carve-out for Alberta products. But if you could just clarify that again, you're seeking a carve-out for Canada, period, and you're not seeking a carve-out for Alberta energy. Can you go over that again?
Alberta has a robust cross-border trade in food products and agri-food. We've got a robust forestry industry. We've got manufacturing. I don't want any of those industries to be hurt either. And so I just feel like our strongest position, especially looking at the executive orders that came out yesterday, is we know what the Americans want. They're very clear about it. They want to have energy dominance. We can help provide that. They want to start building electricity and building out critical minerals supply chains, and we can help with that. They want to have a true partner in border security, so that they don't have to worry about the northern border, and it's up to us to provide that. So those are the things that I think are the pressure points. And you bet, if we can collectively make that argument with each of the endowments that every province and territory has, I think we can be successful. So all I have asked is, do the Americans want to buy more Alberta oil and gas? And I've received some positive indications. The answer is yes. So that's why I'm going to continue on advocating for that. But I have not expected a carve out of any particular industry or product, and I would like to see Canada as a whole continue to maintain the special status that we have.
Thank you, David. And we have time for one last question. So we're going to go to Rick Bell. Rick, could you unmute yourself?
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Oh, good. Wow, I finally know how this thing works after several years. Just a question, a supplementary. What do you say to those people this morning, many of whom have been your critics all the way along, that believe that what happened yesterday, that is to say, not the reprieve, but the fact that there is some sort of timeline, February 1st, April 1st, whatever, that see that contend that you failed, that your approach, has failed, and that it's time to load up on the retaliation. Let's get going. Let's get the the engines running, and that basically, yeah, the no more Mr. Nice Guy. Now we're going to go for it. We're going to go at it. We're going to get ready. What do you say to that?
If there's a failure, the failure lands at the feet of Justin Trudeau, who damaged the relationship with the incoming president by his antics in the first round of negotiations. The frustration that I have reading Robert Lighthizer book, where he goes through and talks about the ways in which Canada messed around and came late to the table and tried to counter with Mexico and ghosted them, it damaged the relationship. Let's be super clear about why we find ourselves in the situation that we're in today. It lands 100% at the feet of Justin Trudeau, who even just a few weeks ago gave a speech where he thought it was an affront to women that Kamala Harris didn't win. We're in a trade negotiation with a brand new administration, and we have a prime minister who keeps on poking his finger in the eye of the current administration and has damaged that relationship. So if there's a failure, it lands at his feet, which is why I'm counting down the days to when he's gone and we can have a reset. It's 47 days to go, and I hope he doesn't continue torching the relationship in the meantime. All I can do is try to repair and build relationships that should have been repaired and built over the last 4 years. That is what we do by having our office in Washington. We have good relationships with people on both sides of the aisle because that is what diplomacy is. You have to be able to work with both Democrats and Republicans, and you have to refrain from expressing a preference for who you would like in the White House. And so if there's a failure of leadership and if there's a damage to the relationship, it's 100% at the feet of Justin Trudeau.
And my supplementary, which is also about the federal government, after you've talked to many people, you've talked to the president, and you've talked to many of the people close to him. Do you think that the Trump administration is taking the current federal government seriously? A, because they don't like them very much and they mocked Trudeau in the past and even yesterday. And two, because they realize that there could be another federal government in a very short time. So do you think they're the point people on this, the federal government? Do you think the Trump administration is actually taking them seriously for the two reasons I mentioned?
It's hard for me to tell. I can only say that the constant trolling and mocking of the prime minister suggests the answer is no. But again, we know there'll be a new prime minister in 47 days. And there may be another new prime minister after that. I think it is up to the premiers who are going to be the consistent voices, those of us who have a longer mandate, to do what we can to maintain the relationships until the leadership question is settled in our country. So I'll watch and see. I think that there are a couple of members who've been identified as consistent voices to maintain and build the relationship in the United States. I saw Francois Philippe Champagne down here. He's got some good friendships down here, and maybe that will help. Dominic LeBlanc clearly is reaching out with his counterparts also, and so those may be the consistent voices that we have over the coming months as the Liberals sort out their internal leadership. But I think that it's going to be up to each of us to manage our relationships and make sure that we're making the case for Canada and for our respective jurisdictions.